Hi there, I'm Heather, and this is my husband, Dr. Ron Llewellyn.
Welcome to Life Together,
A place where we share,
laugh,
and try to provide helpful information on things like marriage,
relationships, mental health issues.
We've been married for 18 years.
We have 2 cats, no kids.
Yeah, so take any parenting advice with caution.
You know, in 18 years, we've been through a lot. We've learned a ton.
And we just want to share those lessons with you. So we hope you enjoy. Hi everyone, welcome back.
Hey.
Heather and Ron here again. Continuing our... Sorry, I was just petting the cat.
I thought you were picking out your beard or something.
Nah, I try to keep that under control.
You do that all the time.
So we're going to continue our series here on PTSD and trauma.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Ron and I, just a side note, we had a project this weekend. I got this wild hair that I wanted to plant a garden, which I've never ever done before, and I'm probably the worst gardening type. I can't keep houseplants alive. I'm sort of the worst. But I decided I'm going to try it out this year. So we built a raised garden bed thing. The instructions on Pinterest said it would take 20 minutes. It took a good 3 hours probably, and 3 trips to Lowe's. And then we had to figure out how to irrigate. We didn't think that through very well at first, so we ended up sort of tearing. So I planted all the plants, and then we realized, oh, we should have put the irrigation in here first. So we unplanted all the plants, redid the irrigation. It turned out great, but it took 7 hours all day yesterday. We were so exhausted. Probably that last hour was so awful. We were both so tired, so incredibly sore. I'm still so sore today. So Ron was just so glad that I wanted to be a gardener this year, and he got to help me with that project. So, yeah, today was what?
No, go ahead.
Oh, so today was a lazy day for most of the day. We both kind of laid around the house. I had heating pads all over my back, and finally about 4 o'clock we decided to get out of the house today. But
She woke up and we decided to get out of the house.
yeah. But that's all right. It was a good project. I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
So we have a little bit of trauma going on, I think, from our Ron's cut and bruised, and we're sore and tired. Anyway, just a little side note there.
Yeah, thanks for doing that.
You're welcome.
I had no idea that was the project for Saturday. I typically don't. I wake up and all of a sudden there's a list of things that we're going to do.
It was so beautiful outside. I don't think we could have picked a better day to do it, right?
In my opinion, it was so beautiful outside we wasted a beautiful day.
Yeah.
Okay, anyways.
Okay.
All right.
Let's continue with our real topic.
All right, let's talk more about PTSD. We're actually on the 5th cluster. Is that okay to say cluster? The
Sure.
5th cluster.
That's 3 times.
Okay. And this is what a lot of people, when they think about PTSD, they think of. Because this has the irritable behavior outburst. This has reckless destructive behavior. This has the hypervigilance and exaggerated startle response. Those are the 2 big ones you see in the Hollywood hits and stuff like that. Then problems with concentration and problems with sleep. Now, a lot of these have to do with something called the HPA.
I don't know what that is.
I thought you were going to describe this to everybody.
Let's see. What does HPA mean? Hyper.
No.
Hypo.
Yeah.
Hypo.
She got the first word.
Pepperoni.
No.
Oh, I don't know.
Hypothalamic, pituitary, adrenal
Oh.
axis.
I would rather have pepperoni.
Hypothalamic pituitary. Sorry, you want to talk about your pepperoni?
No, go ahead.
Hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. Sorry, which is the fight or flight.
Oh.
Pretty much what it is.
Just say it like that. That's easier.
And I'm not going to go through the whole HPA axis because we don't need to do that. But in general, understanding a few things will be really, really important. So hop on board here for a little bit of neurology. And because this is going to be really important. If you have PTSD, to learn how to manage your symptoms. And if you're a clinician, to learn how to help people, which you probably already know this already. Or if you have anxiety or panic attacks, it's pretty much the same thing anyways. So let's talk about the HPA. Now to break this down though, it's very important. Number one, I said important. This is really important that you understand that the autonomic nervous system is a part of the overall nervous system. The autonomic nervous system has two divisions, not clusters. Divisions.
Okay.
They have two divisions. One's called the sympathetic, the other one's called the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is what triggers, it is actually the fight or flight response. Well, you can't stay in a fight or flight response forever, so we need another nervous system that's going to come in and turn those systems off. So the parasympathetic nervous system returns us back to the homeostatic state. So what tends to happen, let's say that we have this stressor that happens, that's on the outside of us. Well, we have to perceive it somehow. We'll perceive the stressor through all of our senses, our vision, our sight, our hearing, our smell. Am I boring you?
Sorry, I'm still so tired.
And so it enters into the relay station of the brain. Everything with the exception of the sense of smell enters into what's called the thalamus.
Okay.
And then the thalamus relays it to where it needs to go. Well, the thalamus in general relays it to two primary areas. One is the frontal lobe, and the next one is the limbic system. The frontal lobe is our logic. The limbic system has to do a lot with emotion and memory. And can you guess? Now, I've heard this. I've never read the research on this, but I heard it'll get to one of those centers first. The emotional or the logic. Which one do you think it gets to first?
Emotional.
That's what I've been told. I heard it in another conference talk. So it'll hit the emotional center real quick. It does with the logic centers too, but if we're not able to logically talk ourselves down, if we're not actually in a threat, then the limbic system will send that same signal saying, okay, we're in trouble, and it'll send it to the locus arealis, which has concentrations in norepinephrine. I thought you were going to clarify the big words.
No, I don't know what that big...
Okay.
Say it again.
Locus arealis.
Locus arealis. I don't know.
You don't know?
No.
So the locus arealis is the portion of the brain that basically generates norepinephrine.
Okay.
Norepinephrine, easy way to think about that, is adrenaline. Now, if all of a sudden the brain starts getting saturated with adrenaline, the fight or flight cascade begins, and it goes all the way through, down through the adrenal glands and all that type of stuff. We go into a full panic attack. If we can talk ourselves out of the panic using the logic center to shut down the emotional center, then the cascading isn't as strong, or it can stop. That's why some of the self-talk, although sometimes I dig on self-talk, but that's why it can be so important as long as you can control it and so forth. So anyways, what we're talking about...
So if you use like logic to say, calm down, there's nothing to be... Like you start kind of talking, when you say self-talk, like you start talking yourself through different things.
Yeah, and so the self-talk's helpful, but sometimes using rational thought to understand irrational stuff is sometimes difficult. And a lot of trauma is irrational. It's outside of our normal being. And even the reenactment of it can feel and seem really irrational. So some people really struggle with that. Now, there is some things that happen called up and down regulation of this nervous system. And I know I'm probably boring you, but this is really essential to what we're doing here. Upregulation, if you're in an anxious state, more often than not during a 12-hour period, the body will adjust the number of receptors, and so forth. And if you're not, it'll adjust as well. And what the body wants to do is remain in a homeostatic state. So if you're very anxious, it'll actually try to prune it down. Or if you're not anxious, it'll try to increase it. Anyways, but it does increase the sensitivity of the overall nervous system. And so a simple thing can create a massive response because we become so sensitive and we jump into this fight or flight really quickly. Now, with that said, we're talking about the saturation of adrenaline into the body. We look at these symptoms and we recognize, well, we have irritable outbursts. That could be easily explained by the increase in adrenaline. Mm-hmm. We have the exaggerated startle response. We have problems with concentration. And we have sleep disturbance. Mm-hmm. All of those symptoms could be understood by this fight or flight response. Now, again, how is this adaptive? We got to understand the fight or flight is a warning system that we have, that we've actually been blessed with. And so it is an adaptive function to keep us safe. To be safe is better than to be in danger. Are you okay?
Yes. Why?
I don't know.
I'm just listening and learning. All
right, so with that said, you always have to wonder, and we're going to get more into this in treatment, but why do therapists always say, you got to breathe, we do it naturally, you got to breathe. Because when we breathe, it reduces our heart rate. It basically increases our oxygen saturations, which is the exact opposite of what the fight or flight does. Okay. We're trying to take control of that system and get the parasympathetic nervous system to engage. Simply by taking in air. Yeah, my services aren't needed anymore.
So just breathe.
Just breathe.
Just breathe.
That's it. Yeah. Logic and breathe. Yeah. But let's get into a little bit more of a controversial topic. And I think this is one that a lot of people are going to be interested in. What about this reckless and self-destructive behavior? Why would someone be self-destructive? Let's talk about one of the main forms of self-destructive behavior. That's self-mutilation.
Like cutting?
Like cutting. Okay. Well, there's lots of forms. There's burning, cutting, banging your head, anything that's pretty much harmful to yourself, even some self-harm. I had one clinician tell a client that I was working with that his exercising 2 times or 3 times a day was self-harm, which it made sense theoretically too. So, I mean, anyways, take it for what you will. But self-harm is a coping strategy. And I'm going to go into some research real quick. Just got to get down to my research page here. Now, often when you think about self-harm, you're thinking about cutting. And there was a research study by Breer and Gill? That's right. And they did, basically, they asked people, why is it that you cut? And they just gathered some basic data. Do you want to take a couple guesses without looking at my notes as to why people cut?
Well, I think it's like a form of control.
Oh.
They're the person inflicting the pain, right? Rather than someone else.
Wow.
So that's like big, right? Did I nail it right on the head?
No, not perfect, but it's you're on
okay.
On board. Good.
That's what I would guess, is that they're taking control over that feeling.
Very good. 83%, we're going to come back to what she just said, but 83% of the respondents in the research said they cut for self-punishment.
Because they're
go ahead.
Blaming themselves
because
for what
they're
happened?
Blaming themselves or because of the guilt. So to address the guilt and the self-blame, which is there to cover over the helplessness, then there needs to be punishment, and self-mutilation comes in to reduce the problem with the guilt and the self-blame. You see this cascading, it's all coping strategies, it's just we're getting to more maladaptive forms. 80% said it helps them avoid painful feelings.
Okay. How does it help them avoid painful feelings? Because they're not thinking about the traumatic event and they're focusing on this other painful feeling?
Yep.
So they're trading one painful feeling for another.
Physical pain for emotional pain.
Okay. Got
And you can better control physical pain than you can emotional pain, which is a coping strategy, which is what you were alluding to.
Okay.
77% said they use it to manage stress. Same type of deal.
Okay.
They start to feel stressed, then this helps calm them down. Let me see if this is in my notes. I'll wait. I'll give it a couple more before I bring this up. 71% said it enhanced feelings of power and control over the body.
Okay.
Now think back to the body memories. Oh, go ahead. You were going to say
so
something.
I was going to ask, because it's power and control over the body.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, does this happen when people have that feeling? Like they're doing it to feel power and control over their body. Is that more a symptom of someone who was traumatized physically?
In this case, yeah.
Okay.
Go back to the body memory section a couple episodes ago. You think I mentioned one of my clients felt that there were hands all over her body. Well, instead of feeling the hands, if you cut yourself, you're feeling the pain versus the hand, and that gave her control over the body. That's a coping strategy, the sense of control over non-control. Okay. And then 58% said a broken obsession with the traumatic related memories. So when they couldn't get out of their head with the traumatic event, they would cut, and then the focus would
Give
be
them something else to
directed.
focus on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, a lot of times therapists, I think they get creeped out. Even family members obviously get creeped out about self-cutting, but I want you to think about this. These are very important coping strategies for people who seem to have, that seem to be relying on what they can find for coping strategies. Hopefully I said that in the correct way. And a lot of times you'll hear people say, well, you can't do that anymore. And then we're taking away a coping strategy, probably one of the last ones they had left, at least in their mind, and that could be pretty damaging.
So, I mean, obviously, cutting or self-mutilization is not a positive behavior. It's right. I mean, ultimately, that's something you want to try to get them to stop, but you have to. It's not like an immediate, like, you can't do that anymore. You've got to get through some work first. Is that kind of okay?
You have to start working through what's leading the person to cut, because if that's not worked through, then they're just going to, if they can't cut, they're going to find a different way to cope with it.
You got to give them some different coping strategies.
Yeah, they have to develop some different coping strategies.
Right.
So.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, Constance Dallenberg, who actually taught at the university I went to, talks a lot about the transference, or the countertransference of cutting. And we're going to get into this a lot more in the treatment section as we talk about transference, countertransference, and transference neuroses, all that fun type of stuff. This is when it really gets interesting. So when we get into transference neuroses, it is very interesting, I'm telling you. So come back for those episodes. And families can utilize this even if they're not licensed to work through trauma. But anyways, just like Breer and Gill said, Dallenberg also did some research and said that a lot of self-cutting is basically an attempt to master their own feelings or their own body. Or they're seeking a punishment. So pretty much the same type of stuff you see in Breer and Gill's, Dallenberg pointed out, but she mentioned something else. And Freud talked about, in trauma, something called the repetition compulsion.
What is that?
It means that these types of traumatic events, even if it's not the trauma itself, but some sort of related element to the trauma, will continue to get reenacted day in and day out.
I'm totally lost. I don't understand what you're saying. Give an example.
Okay, no, take for a second this idea that a person starts to believe that they're helpless or they're to blame. Either one of those conditions, which we talked, can be on opposite continuums. Well, if a person believes they're to blame for something, then they start to expect that they're to blame for things, and they start to in a sense, not so much allow, but they don't challenge some of the negative things that people might do to them.
Okay.
And so throughout their day, throughout their life, they're continually
Okay.
being taken advantage of.
Okay.
That's just a
Got it.
repetition of this trauma, what the trauma's put into place.
Okay.
And it happens all the time in therapy. That's where a lot of the transference work happens. So yeah, anyways, that covers the symptoms. Other than, as we mentioned in the very first episode, it has to exist. These symptoms have to be present more often than not for 1 month.
Well, thanks for watching us again, and I feel like you were going to say something, no? If you like what you see, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check us out on Facebook. We're on Instagram. And our website, Life Together. I don't remember what our website is.
It'll be on the scrolling credits.
Right, just check. It's all out. We're in all the places, so you can find us wherever. But share us with your friends. Yeah, we just hope that what we're talking about is helpful to people, and you never know who it could be helpful for. So share it with your friends, with your family, let them know about it. And yeah, if you have feedback for us, if there's other things you'd like to hear about, if you want us to not say cluster so much,
Or
yeah,
or important.
right. Send us, I can't stop myself. Send us an email or, yeah, a message on Instagram.